Clyde, what would you practice for 6 years and give up for a chance at impressing Jeff Probst? Is there anything that you would undertake and sacrifice for more than a half a decade just to give it all up for a chance at approval from Jeff?
I think a better question is, what would I not give up to impress Jeff Probst? Because I think the list is pretty slim. And for Kyle this week, it seems like he's willing to give up a lot to impress that man that's filled with all sorts of different plastics and Botox.
America's Ken doll, Paramount Plus Ken, Jeff Probst. Welcome back to Survivor Analytics, the show where we talk about Survivor. It's the middle of the season, you know what we're doing here. I'm the voice of the people. My name's Jack. With me, as always, the true expert. Say hi, Clyde.
What's up, party people? I'm back. I'm gone for 2 weeks, and it feels like I missed a lot. I missed the downfall of Rome. I wish I could have been here for that episode because Rome was on my fantasy team. He's still one of the highest point scorers in our fantasy league, despite being gone for 2 weeks. I missed last week where production threw multiple twists into the episode. They had the tribe swap and then Saul's advantage. And I think the listeners should be thankful that I missed last week because I was not a fan of those gimmicks and I probably would have been unbearable for the entire 60 minutes.
Even more so. Yep.
But I can just kind of fill you in on where my head's at.
At
this point.
What's your take? As of this week, this is episode 8 of Survivor 47, in case your podcatcher is auto-playing and you don't know what episode you're listening to. We are, as of this week, at the jury. Everybody who voted out from here on out is in the jury. So where's your head at, Clyde?
So for me, when I'm watching these seasons, I'm always trying to lock down my winner pick because I know people tune into the podcast because they want to know who's going to win the season. And I'm the guy that tells you the answer like a month and a half beforehand.
And I'm also here.
And Jack's here as well. He's the color commentator of the podcast.
Yeah.
But I look back at my history, and in 46, I picked Kenzie to win the season by the final 10. In 45, I picked Dee to win the season by the final 10.
Whoa.
And we're going into the final 10 now, and I still don't feel like there's a clear front runner on this cast. I think there's a couple players that are your zero chance winners at this point.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's one person that everyone can agree on as the leader on Survivor 47. I can run down the non-contenders quick if you want to hear them.
Sure.
I'd say right now the non-contenders are Kyle, Saul, Sue, Andy, and Gabe. I don't think any of those 5 are winning the season under any circumstance. The other 5, I think you could make an argument in favor of.
I'd like to point out that you didn't say Sam there.
I didn't say Sam there. I was worried about Sam going into this week's episode. There was a lot of content focused on that dynamic between Sam and Sierra, and I knew it was only a matter of time until one of those players was sent out the door. And when you look at the edit leading up until this point, Sam was shown as the main character of Gada. He got a ridiculous amount of screen time in the pre-merge. He talked about how he had never eaten pineapple before. We get Sam rapping on the beach. There's a lot of unnecessary Sam content in the edit. So I could see a world where he kind of rebounds from the Sierra elimination and goes on to win the season. The fact that Sierra went home this week, spoiler, it's obviously bad for Sam's game, but I think from an edit perspective, it's good in that he was not the person cut from that partnership. So he might have a little bit more free reins to operate the post-merge. I think there's still an argument in favor of Sam. I don't know where he ranks in terms of those other 5, but I wouldn't call him out of contention yet. The other 5 players I mentioned, I would be shocked if any of them went on to win the season.
Yeah, I'd throw out Saul. I see Saul winning this game. I love Saul. Big Saul head over here. Saul's secret agents, baby.
Well, I'm gone for 2 weeks on the podcast and everyone becomes Saul's #1 fan. Both Carrie and Alexis gave him the winner 2 weeks ago, and then both you and Zach gave him the winner last week. So Saul's on a hot streak right now, and I'll likely be the person that tears him down.
You see it crumbling for him. I think it's fair to say after this episode, things are messy in this game in a great way. I was really happy with the outcome of this vote, not because I was stoked to see Sierra go home, but the fact that we got a tie at this stage in the game things are that messy, fantastic.
This is a season where the alliances are starting to spread more outside the original tribal lines. It's kind of one of my constant complaints with the new era is that Jeff keeps saying, this is a dynamic game. It's crazy out here. But in reality, more often than not, since it's only 26 days, players make those alliances in the pre-merge and they kind of stick with them in the post-merge. I don't think it's as dynamic as people make it up to be, but I'm getting the sense that this season might be an exception. We'll jump into that more as we get through the episode. Do you want to start post-tribal council with the Rachel and Saul situation?
Yeah. So the big question coming out of our last episode, the last Survivor Analytics episode, was how would Saul own or keep quiet his influence in last week's vote? And pretty much as soon as he can get Rachel alone and they can have, some privacy, he tells her and she is stoked. They have a genuine connection. They seem to be good friends. There's a very funny moment where they're both talking about how their immigrant parents from Asia both owned stores. And that's their little bonding thing, which is really sweet. And essentially Saul is building the SSAs, Saul's secret agents. We've got a couple now, right? Andy and Rachel both want to work with Saul. And I like how he owned it. Didn't own it in front of the class, right? Told Rachel privately, hey, I'm the one who kept you in the game. Let's work together. She responds well. And I love that his agents, for lack of a better word, are all over the place, right? They're in the middle of a bunch of other alliances and dynamics. You said this a minute ago. He's gotten 4 winner picks in the last 2 weeks. And I think it's well-deserved with this current situation, Is he my winner pick this week? Maybe.
Okay.
Am I biased? Perhaps.
Is this just the new Shambo reinvented in the new era?
How dare you? I would not insult Saul by comparing him to Shambo. Shambo, I was convinced, had a great game going. Saul has a great game going, right? Everything I wanted Shambo to be doing, pulling strings behind the curtain, right? All of that is what Saul's actually doing. So, big Saul fan over here.
I like what you said about him creating alliances in different pockets on the beach. Like, if Lavo takes control of the game, he's connected to Genevieve and Teeny. If the original Gata members take control, he has the connection to Rachel. Or maybe it's just pure chaos and someone like Andy ends up having a lot of agency. He's got that connection as well. So I agree with what you said about Saul building a lot of bonds across the island. My issue right now is that I think Saul could have kept quiet on this secret in its entirety and then brought it up at the final tribal council. I think players on the jury, especially in the 26-day format, it's a shortened game, they're very focused on what's the latest thing that I saw. It's very reactionary. So I think if Saul went into the final tribal and revealed at that point that he was the one that saved Rachel, then that's a big move on his resume. But by telling Rachel now, you were getting the short-term satisfaction of building that alliance. But I think Saul might have been in a spot where he did not need more connections on the beach. He could have rolled with the people he was already aligned with, and now he has a big move in his back pocket to present at the end. Because Rachel, yes, she'll want to work with him in the short term, but as we get closer to the end of the game, is Rachel really going to want to go to the end with Saul, knowing that he was directly responsible for her survival? So just something important to think about there.
That's a good point. I think that in the short term, Rachel is in such a place that I think it can go long enough that I personally see Saul dropping Rachel, not the other way around. Because I think Saul likes Rachel, but he's also very conscious of, or I hope he's very conscious of her threat level, right? Caroline's gunning for her. Genevieve's gunning for her. See, I know these names. And I think when you have enough of that, hopefully Saul has the wherewithal to be willing to let her go. But Rachel's got some staying power as well. So
for sure. And I'll also say on the topic of Rachel, I think it's really interesting that we get all of these confessionals this week of players like Genevieve saying, oh, she's a big threat. She's this major social powerhouse, when in reality, a lot of things have not went Rachel's way. Like, she lost Annika in the pre-merge. She later loses Sierra this episode. So that's something that I always feel disconnected by when a player's strategic game doesn't necessarily match the perception of other people.
Right.
I'm good to go onto the auction gimmick if you are.
Oh boy, gimmick. How dare you?
That's a gimmick.
Welcome back to the Survivor auction, everybody. A Survivor classic. If you saw the reactions from this cast when they find out they're going on the auction, you know they're happy. But guess what? There's a gimmick within a gimmick. We're doing another cash run again. This sucked last time. Have they done that twice or just twice for us?
They did it in 45 as well. But that's the only time in Survivor history that they included this component of the auction. Before this point, every player would just go to the auction with the same amount of money, and you would bet on things with, get this, without your vote at risk. It would just be a normal auction as the way it was intended. But that's not the way we can do it anymore.
So we have to do the money run or cash race, whatever you want to call it. Couple things to note. Sam, a sports commentator or radio host or sports journalist or something, seems to be actively commentating on the event as it's going on. What I want to know is, did production ask him to record that after the fact? Or did he decide, you know what, I don't need more cash. I'm just going to hang out and I'll do this for the camera.
It was definitely after the entire rush. But you know production casted Sam for this exact purpose. When they saw on his resume that he was a sports commentator, same thing with Rome, they knew that they would get some juicy confessionals out of him to explain all the dynamics on the island. So they're getting everything they could possibly want from Sam right now.
Oh, for sure. So Sam's giving us some great color commentary. Sierra is a beast. She tells us that she only last year retired from Easter egg hunts with her family, which is hilarious because I love the idea of a 20-something destroying little children in any competition. I love those videos where like a pro footballer smokes 100 third graders in soccer, right? Like those are so much fun. Sierra gets a ton. And then there's Andy. We talk when people get eliminated, especially at this stage in the game, about whether or not players who are eliminated will be returning to the show. Andy has hit the point in his edit where I don't think he'll come back, right?
Wait, what?
Because the edit on Andy in this section is so absolutely brutal. Because Andy can't find a single tube of cash. And there are easily 5 clips of him going, I don't know where the money is, and walking by one that's at eye level. Or him saying to Genevieve, I can't find any cash. And Genevieve goes, oh, bummer. Yoink. It was behind your ear, Andy, and running away, right? It's absurd. And then throughout the rest of the auction, we get consistent reaction shots of Andy just sitting there looking sad. Don't get me wrong. I'm happy about that. But it's the kind of edit that makes me think like, oh man, maybe production didn't like him.
No, I think production loves Andy. We'll get more into Andy later on with the He's All That segment of the episode.
That kind of redeems it.
I think Andy could totally come back in the future because any screen time is good screen time when it comes to returning player chances. And I understand that to the untrained eye, you might watch this segment and think, oh, Andy's not finding any money because he's a horrible challenge competitor. But I took a deeper look here, and I know what Andy's really doing behind the scenes. Andy knows that if you end the auction with the most amount of money, you lose your vote at the upcoming tribal council. And for him, he wants to flip against Gada, and how can he do that if he doesn't have his vote? So the easy solution is to just throw the money section of the auction, not get any money, preserve your vote for the upcoming tribal. And I think Andy is really masterminding this entire thing. That might be me putting on my tinfoil hat, but...
It is. You're absolutely giving him too much credit because nobody... Here's the thing. Kyle was vegan for 6 years, and he licks a plate of buffalo wings clean in this episode. Andy is going insane about a guy getting applauded for chopping a coconut in the first episode of the season. He is not giving up his chance to eat for a vote. He's not.
See, I don't think that was a food-based reaction with the whole coconut thing. I think that was just an emotional reaction. Like, he wanted the
Right.
moral support of his other competitors.
But I guess what I'm saying is not that was a food reaction, but that he had that much of an emotional reaction on like day 2. Now we're at day 14 without food. If I was in Andy's shoes, even if I'm trying to throw a vote, right? Like, get some money. It's more embarrassing to have nothing than a little something.
But he's Andy. That's the whole thing. Like, if anyone's going to
God.
get zero money in that section of the challenge,
It is going to be
Andy
him.
is like the most believable. When he does it, it doesn't look like he's throwing it on purpose. If Sam walked back and had no bundles of money, people would kind of be raising their eyebrows at him. But since he's Andy, he can get away with it.
It's insane to actually claim this is intentional, but I'm going to let you get away with it for now.
Okay, great. You want to go to the auction then?
Let's go to the auction. We get an incredibly high-resolution slow motion of the gavel, which Jeff only uses to start and end the auction, right? He's not going, bam, sold. He just goes, bam, auction started, bam, auction finished. And we get the slow-mo. I have written down everything that was bought and the cost at which it was bought.
Oh, man. I don't know if we need to go through every item.
So do you have any highlights then? And I can tell you exactly how much was paid for them.
So let's start with Sierra and the margarita. How much did she buy I think it was like chips and guac and a
Sierra
margarita.
bought an $800 mystery item that was chips, salsa, guac, and a giant margarita that she immediately demands a selfie with Jeff.
Have you heard of the margarita curse? Have you heard about this theory going around online?
Clyde, as passionate as I am about Survivor and as much of my life as I dedicate to producing this show, I have not seen anything. No, what is the margarita curse?
So, fun fact, the last 4 Survivor players to purchase a margarita in the auction were booted in that same episode. 2 of those players we have not covered, but the last person this happened to was Kelly on Survivor 45. She got the margarita and then went home that same week.
That's actually crazy.
So I didn't know this when Sierra first purchased the margarita, but looking back at it now, I would just say advice to future Survivor players to not purchase the margarita under any circumstance, given the history that we have. That's one highlight. We can also talk about Kyle and the chicken dilemma. You brought this up earlier.
Yeah.
How did you feel about this decision from production to essentially present a vegetarian with meat and say, hey, this is the only food option you get?
I like it. No special favors on Survivor. Buffalo cauliflower is nowhere near as good as buffalo wings, right? Like, it's just not.
I think Kyle might disagree, but okay.
Kyle essentially goes, wow, I was vegan for 6 years, and like 6 months ago, I started eating vegetarian just in case, I was on Survivor and I'd have more flexibility, right? He just added dairy and maybe eggs back in. And then Survivor's like, have some meat, do it, or don't, and you have to waste it, right? And for a guy like Kyle, who seems like one of the, a very, very kind person, very considerate, wasting food seems worse than giving up his perfect meatless streak. And he does it, man. He goes clean. Absolutely hilarious. Good for Kyle. Hopefully he has a deep run and doesn't regret this in a week,
Oh, I'll talk more about Kyle later, but I think his days are very numbered at this point. I hope you would enjoy your meat boy while he's around.
I mean, I'm glad he's a meat boy and not a tofu boy anymore. I think that's what we called him last week.
Yeah, that was the title of the episode.
Yeah. So I liked that one. And then we get Jeff's terrible British accent. Jeff starts doing bits. So Jeff, every time he walks up with a new tray, starts doing little jokes and little improv. He's like, oh, I'm using my best acting skills. Hello, sir. Would you like my tray of mystery food? It's not very funny, but it really feels like Jeff going, I get to have the spotlight and you all have to laugh at me because this is my show.
Oh, of course. You can't not laugh when he's trying. My favorite bit he does is when he walks up cautiously with a covered item and he tells the contestants that, oh, I might be walking cautiously as a way to trick you into buying a bad thing. And I'll be honest, I've seen some of Jeff's acting work in the past.
Is it?
I know what to expect there. He's not acting. There's definitely a positive item underneath that cover, and I would have bet on it.
And it should be noted at this point that we have a couple of predictions made that immediately come true, right? Or almost true. Gabe is convinced he has fish guts under the thing. Instead of fish guts, he gets a coconut full of ice water for $660. So he wasn't exactly right, but he was close. Rachel goes up and she's like, I'm feeling it's a burger. She's right. It's a burger. So whatever Jeff's acting is, he is conveying exactly what's under the tray or under the cloche. Do you know that's what that was called? Cloche?
Oh, I did not. With Rachel purchasing that burger, she also finds a clue hidden in the fries. And that's something that I appreciated about this version of the auction. Like, I'm okay with them putting advantages into it, but they shouldn't be advantages that are like publicly presented. They should be hidden somewhere in the food. But my issue with the auction at large is that there's too many gimmicks at play here, because the new gimmick that they add in is that some covered items will include cash as well. So even if you're trying to unload all of your funds to ensure that you do not have the most money, you still might get money back. So it feels like we're just taking more and more agency away from the players when we're adding a twist on top of another twist. It's just leaving more room to chance. And I don't think that's really fun from a viewer's perspective. I've said this a million times, but I'm okay with just running a normal auction. There's no votes at risk. And we just see the players' personalities on screen as they buy different items.
There's even another twist that you didn't mention, which is the auction will end without warning.
Yeah,
that's all kind of messy, but to keep noting, so Rachel finds the piece of paper, a couple others to note. There's a competition for a giant Survivor breakfast, right? $200 buy-in. Sue, Sierra, Sam, and Caroline all initially bid, and basically whoever finishes 2 grubs, live grubs, I feel much worse about them being living than being grubs, but the first person to do it gets a giant breakfast. Sam wins it.
Well, I'll also note there that it's a $200 buy-in, but you can back out. Like, Sierra bought in and then said, I'm not going to eat the grubs, and then got her $200 back. I think if you buy into the challenge, you shouldn't be able to get your money back and go sit back over in the auction area.
So I think this goes back to, I think you have to complete the transaction to get rid of the money and to protect your vote, right? Because the next thing I was going to mention is Caroline buys fish eyes for $280 and does eat them. And it's at the point in the episode where they were kind of rushing through the purchases because the auction was really long.
Yeah.
And I think the reason she eats them is because if she doesn't, she has the most money left in the game.
You think you need to eat it to officially complete the transaction?
Yes, because otherwise, why else would she eat them?
For the bit. It's to play it up on screen. Austin did the same thing in 45. He ate some of the fish eyes, and she wanted to pay homage to him.
See, well, I don't think we have enough screen time from that moment to know for And then Sam ends up losing his vote with $160 left.
Yeah, so Sam loses all of his agency this week. It ends up not making a major difference later on in the episode, but it does create some weird complexities on the revote that I can explain later. Post-auction, though. Is there an animal shot?
There is an animal. I need to get a jingle or something, man, because there is an animal shot. Animal shot.
That is very copyrighted. If you make a jingle, I'll put it in the episode. But it has to be a Jack original, and it can't be you copying another organization.
Let me think of another jingle really quick. That's all I can think of now.
Like a good neighbor.
Like a good animal. Animal shots are here. So there's an animal shot. It's a bird eating a fish. It's the same kind of crane we've covered a couple of times, which tells me that Survivor has been in Fiji so long, they're running out of animals to film. But it's that same kind of black heron or crane that we've seen a couple times. Didn't even have to look it up this time. I recognized it on site.
Wait, what does that represent? This is the whole purpose of the animal shot. There's supposed to be some symbolism here.
It's a bird eating some fish after everybody ate a bunch of stuff.
Oh, okay. This is a D tier animal shot.
You asked for more bits from me, Clyde, and you know what?
This is not more bits. This is the bare minimum on the bits that you already have in place.
I guess I misunderstood. I was going for quantity, not quality. But
oh, okay, my bad.
So let's talk about Rachel, because this is absolutely spectacular. Rachel gets a moment alone, looks at her little piece of paper, and she's been given the location of a hidden immunity idol sewn into the corner of one of the tarps at camp. Fantastic, right? This is a spectacular hidden idol. Way better than, was it last season that there was the driftwood one?
That was this season, I think.
So I like this a little bit better because it's still involved, right? It's still a significant challenge to cut open the tarp in the middle of camp without anyone noticing. She nails it. Everybody is underneath the tarp, right? In the shelter facing the fire. Rachel just steps around the corner and gets it.
This is great for Rachel in the long run. Before this week, I would have said that Rachel had no chance at winning the season, but I feel like her edit has really picked up. I mentioned earlier that other people seem to respect her and identify her as a threat. Last week, she got a bunch of content when she was going to tribal council and she got saved. And this week, we see a lot from her with finding the idol and also playing her shot in the dark, which is a very impressive move that I'll want to talk about later. But I don't know, my issue with Rachel is the same issue that I've had with her all season, and that's I feel like we only see Rachel when we need to see Rachel. You can compare Rachel to someone like Teeny. Like, Teeny doesn't even get their way this week, yet we still see Teeny on screen. Whereas for Rachel, we see her once Annika gets booted, and we need to see her reaction after losing her number one ally. We see her when she's by herself in that swap tribe. Like, you need to show Rachel's perspective there. And we see her when she finds an idol. Like, I feel that Jeff only cares about putting Rachel up in front of us when there's no other option.
It feels like, and to go back to the moves that she makes this week, right? The shot in the dark. She has a great strategic head on her shoulders as an individual, but we are not seeing her make any moves, right? She's not leading any alliances or anything like that.
And even looking forward, like, I've seen a lot of people say that Rachel is the top contender to win the season now, but I just don't know who she has to depend on. Like, she could align with Sam after this week. Keep in mind, Sam voted out Annika a couple weeks ago.
Right.
She could go to Andy, who also flipped against her. I feel like Rachel's only stable ally right now is Saul. But outside that, it seems pretty murky for her. Other thing that we get in this section of the episode post-auction is this initial plan for Gada and Lavo to band together against the Tuku members. This was the original idea that was set up last week when they went on reward. And Teeny is the player that stands up and says, we need to get rid of Kyle. He's already won 2 individual immunities. And who knows, maybe if Kyle ends up losing the challenge this week, he ends up going home.
Right.
But I know Teeny is your winner pick for the season. And I'm also a Teeny fan. I think they're one of my favorite characters on the season. But I feel like we're getting this storyline from Teeny of nothing really goes their way.
It's a Jake edit a little bit.
Not to the same extent where, like, Jake was kind of looked down upon by the other players. Like, he was just straight up getting left out of plans. Like, Teeny's in the plan, but they just never get the outcome that they desire. Like, if you look back in the pre-merge, Teeny's 2 closest allies on that Lavo tribe were Keyshawn and Asia. And the 2 first people voted out of that tribe were Keyshawn and Asia.
Yeah.
And then when we get to the post-merge, this week, Teeny wants to take out Kyle. That doesn't go through because he wins immunities, so not really on them. But they later want to knock out Sam, and that doesn't happen either.
But they campaign well for Sam to go home, and it does go down to the tiebreak, right? So I think that's circumstantial as well.
But it goes down to the tiebreak. Whole idea behind that plan is that they would split the vote between those 2 contestants, and then Sierra would go home on the revote. Like, the only way Sam goes home in that round is if Sierra plays an idol. So, I don't know. I really like Teeny, and I think they're going to be around on the show for a while, but it's getting a little bit concerning that every single week.
Nothing's working.
Teeny comes up with an idea and it falls apart. Oh, another example is the All Women's Alliance from 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, but that didn't work for anybody, right? Like, that didn't last at all.
Yeah, but it was Teeny's idea to bring all the women together, and then the next 2 players voted out were Tiana and Sierra. I don't feel great about their winning chances. I don't know. You can disagree with me if you want, since that's your first round pick, I think.
The edit sure is going that way, right? And, I think the hard part for Teeny is that all the points they're making are really good. Keep Sierra around, right? Sierra's a better member of an alliance. Sam's a bigger threat, right? Kyle, obviously a huge threat. Teeny is getting this canary in a coal mine edit almost, where people that they target are threats and people aren't listening, right? And that's really tough because part of that is like, I don't know if it's just alliance dynamics, tribal dynamics, if it's the way that Teeny's presenting themselves as around the camp, or if it's just other voices are louder, right? So it'll be interesting to see. We'll have to keep an eye on it. But do you want to go to the challenge?
There's just one other thing I'll throw out before the challenge, and that's a conversation between Genevieve, Sue, and Caroline, where Genevieve is the first player to throw out the idea of voting out one of the Gata players. And
yes,
this is funny to me because later on, we're going to get the entire montage with Andy where he's walking and pulling off his buff and twirling his hair. And the edit hypes this episode up as Andy's big move to flip against Gata. But that kind of neglects the fact that it seems like the pieces were already in motion to go against Gata, and Andy was just kind of jumping on the bandwagon of that plan. So it depends how you look at it and how the other competitors will look at it. But I would expect right now, if Andy sits at the end, that he does not get credit for this move, even if he might deserve it.
The hard part with Andy, right, is the edit. There's a couple moments in this episode where people go, oh, I forgot about Andy. And even Sam is like, yeah, I forget about Andy. Like, one of his core alliance members, who knows if that alliance is going to work out how he wants it to, right? Who remembers Andy, right? To a degree that it's like, oh, we're really setting him up to feel like forgotten almost. I thought that was interesting. And I find Caroline to be a very funny presence on the island, because it seems like she really wants to be in the mix as a big decision maker and player, and that is always just present for other people. You know what I mean? Like, there's been a lot of conversations that Caroline is a part of that then she goes like, oh, that was great.
She's always hyping up other players for having the same idea as her, but my worry is that she's allowing those other players to take credit for those ideas. Like, earlier in the season, she finds out that Sue kept an idol a secret, and she doesn't read that as, oh, Sue might not trust me. She like hypes up Sue and kind of sees the best in her, which is a really like positive quality outside of Survivor. But I think it can also be good sometimes to be a little bit more critical of people.
It's wholesome in a moment where you should be a little bit more like, wait a minute. How that's a good for them, but how is that for me?
And then this week, Genevieve comes up with that idea to flip against Gata, and Carolyn hops in confessional and says, oh, a great idea, Genevieve. That's what I wanted to do. It's okay for you to take ownership of some of these moves instead of just kind of pushing the focus on other people.
Yeah. Challenge?
Yeah, let's go to the challenge. This is all you. Your favorite part of the episode.
Okay, so the challenge, we did it last season, folks. It's you stand, you're holding a handlebar with a rope wrapped around it. At the other end of the rope is a bucket filled with a quarter of your pre-show body weight, right? So it's proportional. Everybody's got the same ratio of burden, right? So everybody's suffering a little bit, or suffering the same amount, more or less. Something interesting. The last time we covered this, 5 months ago, I was very confused why the challenge would end, right? The rope, as it slowly unwinds around this handlebar, at some point would just sort of go, done. And the expression on people's faces every single time was, what the hell just happened? Here's what I noticed this time, and I'm going to do my best to describe this because, and the point of the challenge is hold on to the handle. Don't let your bucket fall, right? But the bucket would fall abruptly. The reason the bucket was falling abruptly is that it's not just you can't let the handle unspool to a certain point, right? It's not a mechanical, don't trip a lever. The actual rope is a little like noose. There's a loop at the end of the rope hooked on a peg. And so if you don't hold on to it enough, the rope can just slip off the peg. And that's why it's so abrupt. There's no click. There's no clear failure state. There's just a certain point in the position where the rope will just go. So I do think that I noticed that this time and wanted to point that out. The other twist this time that we didn't have, I don't believe, when we covered this in 46, is that we're doing it by gender, right? One male and one female will win this challenge. And so double immunity. It just bothers me that there's two winners. Honestly, watching this, I think Sue could have won. I think Sue could have beat Kyle.
I would say a new game that I like to play with these challenges on Survivor is the Andy game, since I'm the #1 Andy supporter. I was watching with one of my friends here at school, and before the challenge started, we made a line on how far into the challenge Andy would make it. Because some people are pretty low on Andy. The line this time was like the third person out of everybody. And he made it pretty far.
He comes in second for the guys. He loses to Kyle in the end.
The edit has dunked on Andy a lot these past couple months, but I also think that he's been presented with many challenges that don't play to his strengths. There's been a lot of balance-based ones, and I think Andy's strong suits are more so in these kind of endurance-based challenges that we will see more of as we continue to progress through the post-merge. So I know Andy has this reputation of being the worst challenge competitor. When they did that schoolyard pick a couple weeks back, he was the last selection there, but don't be surprised if underdog Andy comes out with a win at some point. So Sue and Kyle are your two winners for the challenge. And something Sue said kind of ticked me off here, where after winning the challenge, Sue hops in confessional and gives this motivational speech about how age is just a number, which is a nice message.
Message sponsored by Jeff.
Oh, it is probably sponsored by Jeff. But we need to keep in mind that Sue has been lying about her age the entire season. She's been saying she's 45 since day one. And if age is just a number, then why is she continuing with this ridiculous lie that I don't think people are actually buying?
Right. Nobody's buying it, right? Isn't she saying she's in her 40s when she's in her 60s? Like,
yes. She's going back like 20 years.
Yeah. Taking 20 years off your age when there are 20-year-olds in the game or 20-somethings in the game is absurd. I wrote down too much recruiting, right? Because we get the apply to be on Survivor this week. At this point, it seems to be Jeff's favorite part of the episode because he films this week's apply to be on Survivor before they've finished the auction. Like the people have just left the auction set and he's eating out of the peanut butter and chocolate from the end of the auction in the apply to be on Survivor. And now Sue is also going, apply to be on Survivor. Prove that age is just a number. Hey, you're 80 years old. Come be on Survivor. It's a great way to end.
There's a lot of CBS promotion. Like I watched this episode live this week, which is new for me. I normally watch a recording like an hour and a half after it comes out. So I literally had 90 straight minutes of CBS promotion because all of the commercials are promoting CBS shows. And then when I'm actually on the show that I want to watch, it's promoting itself as well. So I felt like I walked away from this episode and I was brainwashed. I was thinking maybe I should get a Paramount Plus t-shirt. Are we good to go post-challenge then?
Yeah, let's do this. Talk about the thing.
So before we get to Andy, which is obviously my favorite part of the episode, Kyle has a quick confessional here that I just want to quote. He says, in regards to the necklace he just won, it's good for me today, but could be bad for me tomorrow. I'm locking in the prediction now. Kyle is going home next week. This is the end of the road for him.
Whoa, big prediction here.
Really? I think the only thing that saves him is another individual immunity win. And if he wins that challenge, then at the next episode, I'll predict him to go home the following week.
Yeah, you're just going to keep saying it's his week. He's gone.
It's only a matter of time. I think the fact that we're leaving this episode with, what's the breakdown? 4 Tuku, 3 Gata, 3 Lavo. The fact that Tuku has the majority and Kyle has now won 3 individual immunity challenges. He's just peaking too early. I don't see this guy getting particularly far. And I feel like his edit really only focuses on the fact that he's vegetarian. Beyond that, we don't know much.
And he's a nice guy.
Yeah, he's a nice guy.
Like, There's a cute moment where he's talking to Saul and they talk about Karate Kid. And I liked that moment. Thought that was cute. Talk about Andy. I don't want to do it.
This was my favorite part of the episode, potentially my favorite part of the entire season, because I remember all those weeks ago after the premiere when I had drafted Andy with the 101 in my fantasy team, and everyone was saying, Clyde, you're a dummy. How could you possibly think that this guy has any longevity in him? And here we are, a month and a half later, Andy's still kicking it, and he's literally presented as the main character of the entire season. Like, regardless of what happens in the long run, I don't think Andy's actually going to win. I think he's kind of headed towards being a 0-vote finalist. But there's no denying that this season is presented through the lens of Andy in many ways. When he's getting ready for this big flip against the GOTA members, he talks about his journey through the season and how he started kind of as the nerdy kid at the lunch table that no one wanted to hang out with. But now he's taking off his glasses, he's letting his hair get loose, and he's going to become the pivotal player at the merge. Depending on how you interpret the edit, Andy is one of the first major dominoes that falls. And once Andy goes, the question around camp becomes, which GOTA member are we going to target? Are we going to target Rachel? Are we going to target Sam? Or are we going to target Sierra? But that plan doesn't really get into motion until Andy makes the first move. So I was happy. You know, I love me some Andy content. And I think he kind of falls in line with a lot of my other previous fantasy picks, like an Emily Flippin.
In a very different way, I think he's getting an Emily-style edit. Like, the tone of his individual character is different, but the type of edit, the kind of, hey, this is a fun person who's coming around on the island, it's nice. It is. And I like that he's having fun with production, right? It feels like production is getting more and more silly this season, right? You know, we have the Sam color commentary. We've got this. They let Rome talk for hours and hours, right? Production's having a good time, and so are we.
Looking at this vote, though, we have those three names on the board. We got your Rachels, your Sams, and your Sierras. Who do you think is the ideal person to take out here? You can pick from any player's perspective you want. Is there any kind of interesting dynamic that you want to talk about with those three potential targets?
In my mind, and maybe this is just the armchair bias, right? Because I had the same question written down for you, except I didn't have Rachel written down because I don't, and this is, I think, the bias, I don't see Rachel as big of a threat as the contestants do. Sam and Sierra are this famous alliance on this season. And so it needs to be one of them, right? I don't think Rachel is in consideration because we're at Final 10. A two-person alliance that's been there since the beginning, it needs to go, right? That's a clear threat to get rid of, especially now knowing that, hey, whoever goes out is going to the jury. Better to get them out soon than late, I would say, because you don't want them swaying people. You don't want them to continue building a resume in front of their best bud, right? Because if Sam and Sierra both play a great game and then one of them goes out at Final 5, if Sierra win at Final 5, hey, everybody at Ponderosa, Sam's been playing a great game, really worth considering him. I would much rather say put Sierra there now or Sam there now because there's no major moves that have been made by their counterpart.
And do you lean one way or the other in terms of taking out Sam or Sierra first?
Then it gets tricky because I tried to think about what both of them have going on alliance-wise, right? And they both feel very comfortable in their original tribal dynamics and their original alliance. They're not really trying to reach out. Sierra's reached out a little bit more, right? With the women's potential conversation, right? Sam doesn't seem that interested in any of that or in any additional alliances. From that angle, I think I'd have to say Sierra.
That's interesting. It definitely depends whose perspective you're talking about. And I got to talk about Andy's perspective, right? Because that's why people listen into the podcast to begin with.
Yeah, you're playing from Andy's point of view. You're playing the role-playing game of Survivor, and you're Andy.
Well, he's the only person left on my fantasy team after this week. So all of my commentary from this episode moving forward, much like the season itself, will be through the lens of Andy. But right. I think his best move here is to take out Sierra. I think he has an established connection with Sam from the pre-merge that was highlighted earlier in the season. And by cutting Sierra, in an ideal world, Sam now becomes more dependent on Andy. My only concern with voting out Sierra here is the influence of Sierra as the mayor of Ponderosa. I was watching an interview from a player in Season 28, Survivor Cagayan, Chaos Cass, who maybe someday we'll cover. She talked about how, yes, the people that you send to the jury at the very end are very important because they have a lot of intel throughout the season. But sometimes what's even more important is the first person that you send to the jury, because they're the one that sets the tone for everyone else that comes to Ponderosa. So my worry for Andy now is that by cutting Sierra early, he's sending someone to the jury that seems like never really respected him as a player. So I'm worried that as more and more people go and meet up with Sierra, she'll be the one constantly downplaying Andy's game and kind of hurting his winning chances. So I think in some ways, yes, this is bad for Sam to lose his number one ally, but I think the one positive for him is that he has a pro-Sam voice on the jury from now until they vote at the final tribal council. But I'm good to go to tribal council then. Do you have anything to talk about from the tribal discussions, or can we kind of focus on the vote out of the gate?
A lot of talk about war, solid historical reference from Gabe. Andy talks way too much, I think trying to allude to his role, right, without being explicit. And we get a lot of him talking and then shots of Sam and Sierra going like side-eye. Not exactly subtle there from Andy, but that's all I've got.
Well, we get Andy's voting confessional. He has that line where he says, I'm like putting you in your grave and this is your tombstone. He says that to Annika. He also has the one where he speaks in German. Don't know why he does that, but they put it in anyway. And this week he says, I acknowledge that I'm doing you dirty, but I'm a dirty player. So that's my favorite part of every tribal council, is getting to hear what Andy's got to say in the confessional.
Yeah.
But all the votes are cast, and we get this interesting moment from Rachel where she decides to play her shot in the dark. I could explain to you why she did this, but I want to kind of get your perspective as the voice of the people. Did you have an idea of like why Rachel decided to go down this path?
What I got from it, and what I really liked from it, is that Rachel doesn't seem to be really picking up on a lot of her perception around camp as a massive threat, right? We haven't seen her realizing that. But in this moment, the effect that I saw of this move is by playing her shot in the dark, going, I feel like I'm under threat. I'm going to give up my agency to try and stay safe. I see that as a tanking move, right? That's her saying, look, like, I'm going to make myself more vulnerable. I'm going to kind of have a gambit here and say, from now on, I don't have my shot in the dark. Fucking come for me, right? Sorry, didn't mean to swear. But come at me, bro, right? Like, I feel like I'm in danger now and I'm gambling my future on that. Of course, she knows, and we know as the viewer, she has her idol as well. So if she is putting a target on herself for next week, she could potentially control the outcome of that vote. So that's what I saw, was this presenting herself as a lower threat and a bigger target with essentially the Uno reverse in her pocket.
And I would say there's a little bit more at play there too, where what I really found impressive here is that Rachel can still play her idol after the shot in the dark is read. So I think by using the shot in the dark, it was kind of Rachel's...
like a temperature check.
Yeah, it was Rachel's temperature check, because if she played it and it says not safe and all the other contestants have a sigh of relief, knowing that we voted against Rachel and she missed on the shot, then she can pull out the idol. So I thought it was a really interesting way of using the shot in the dark to kind of anticipate whether or not you need to play the idol as well. The other weird thing that happens with this vote, so you originally get a split between Sam and Sierra, and on the revote, Sierra goes out 8-1. But the weird thing here is that Sierra votes in the revote. If you look at the history of Survivor, generally, if there's a vote split between two people, neither one votes in the revote.
Right.
And in Jeff's podcast this week, he said that that is normally the case. But for this week, Sam did not have his vote. So those two votes would not cancel each other out. So Sierra is allowed to vote in the revote.
Because their logic in the vote wasn't, hey, in the revote, you don't get a voice. It was, we assume you're going to vote against one another, so we're cutting you anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only issue there is that it contradicts previous votes in Survivor history. Like there's been times where you have a split between three people, right? And theoretically, in a revote and it's split between three people, those votes won't end up evenly. They could be a 2-1 instead of an even split 1-1-1. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when it's split across three people, none of them vote, but that kind of contradicts everything that we've seen here. So there's new rules that they're introducing to the game where if you do not have your vote, you cannot vote on the revote. So weird logistical thing there.
Yeah, that is a little bit of a moving of goalposts where I would sort of expect, I get it if it's two people, right? Yeah, you're just going to vote for one another. That's fine. But it seems like you shouldn't make the assumption, right? Because all of a sudden it gets more complicated where if you didn't make the assumption at all, you'd be fine.
But honestly, I'm in favor of the new rule. I think this version makes more sense than the old one where if the vote is split on you, you do not vote regardless. So it'll be interesting to see if this affects anything in terms of strategy moving forward. But with Sierra going out of the game, I have the first epitaph of the season.
Oh boy.
R.I.P. Sierra, an expert in Andy underestimation. So a little bit of a tongue twister there.
Your epitaph for Sierra is more praise for Andy. The bias.
Man. Oops.
The journalistic bias here. Oh my God.
Well, here's what I'll say about Sierra. I think she played an incredible game, like one where she was positioned in the middle of that Gada tribe in the early days of the season. But there reached a point where she had to make a decision, and she had to either align with the pair of Rachel and Annika or the pair of Andy and Sam. And at the end of the day, she chose to align with Andy, and that kind of bit her in the butt. I think had she knocked out Andy and rolled with that other duo, she potentially has more longevity on this season. So
yeah,
I think that's really the storyline for Sierra. She underestimated the player that the rest of America underestimated outside of me.
Fair enough. Well,
did you miss having me back for all the Andy content?
I think you took 2 weeks off to go just sit in a shrine you had made of pictures of Andy and go like, how can I make him sound like the greatest Survivor player of all time when I return? I don't think you were doing anything else with your time.
Well, on the topic of Andy, he's my winner for the episode.
Okay, so justify that.
Incredible week for Andy. Intentionally gathered zero money for the auction to keep his vote. Led the vote against Sierra. Now he has a chance to make Sam his number one ally because Sam has no one else on the island. Even though it seems like a lot of people don't really respect Andy, you can't deny the fact that he's on screen a ton.
That's true.
So I knew going into this week that I only had Sierra and Andy left on my fantasy team. I knew that Sierra was at risk of going home, but I feel like I'll be safe for a while. I'd be surprised if Andy does not reach the finale.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, he certainly does seem like a finalist. He does not seem like he will get many votes at that final, but he does seem like he will be doing the dumb walk up the mountain and remembering people. So,
they don't do that anymore. That's only the old school seasons where they do the rites of passage.
Well, fair enough. I disagree with some of your takes there. Respectfully, I think the idea of saying, he intentionally walked by all these obvious tubes of bamboo. No, it's absurd. But the rest of it is fair. My winner is Saul, because guess what? As great as Andy is, he's Saul's secret agent. So everything Andy does, the credit goes to Saul. That's what I call, I can't think of a math pun, some sort of algebra, Saulgebra. That's Saulgebra. And Saul's in a great spot. He's got Andy making these big moves. He's got Rachel making these different but equally great moves. And he's sitting in the middle with close connections to them both. So I like that a lot. He's got a relationship with Kyle. He's got a relationship with Teeny. I love Saul's positioning right now, and nobody seems to be taking him seriously outside of his alliances, which I really like. So
yeah, he says this week that he wants to play up that goofy persona, and it seems like it's working so far.
Yeah.
I need to go back and check, but I'm not sure if Saul has his name written down in a single tribal council this season.
No.
I think he's kind of skated by, especially the disaster of the early Lavo tribe. He's kind of skated by without any marks on him.
And I think it's also worth noting, actually, he said that about the goofy persona, and that hasn't been shown in the edit once. We haven't seen Goofy Saul at all. The closest we get is when he's chopping the coconuts with Kyle. Chops a coconut, he's like, bro, sick chop. Like, that's the closest we get to Goofy Saul, and that's not really Goofy.
I stand corrected. His name was written down once in the pre-merge, but outside that, Saul's been Jay chillin'. And I'll be honest, if I could hang out with anyone on this cast, my pick would probably be Saul. It's a toss-up between Saul and Teeny as my top two.
And I'd throw Kyle out there too, actually. Kyle just seems like a delightful beam of sunshine.
On to losers. I got Sam. I feel like Sam's just the easiest pick here. Do you also have Sam?
I also have Sam.
Lost his number one ally in the game, and he is perceived as a meat boy, which kind of stinks because he hasn't even won an individual challenge yet. So I think Sam's best move going forward is to try to keep Kyle around as long as he possibly can. Because I think the second Kyle goes out, all those eyes are going to shift onto Sam. But I think he'll at least survive next week. I think it's pretty rare that you see a group of people just band together and kind of beat up those players on the bottom week after week.
Sam is also my loser. All the same reasons. Who is Sam turning to, right? Because Andy, this incredible tactical genius, this Sun Tzu, this Napoleon, this third tactical brilliant player, this Machiavelli, Andy, has his sights set on Sam's destruction. So it will come. Do you have a dishonorable mention?
Quick dishonorable to themed seasons. I've noticed that production has low-key been inserting themes into these new era seasons without like fully committing to them. In 46, the theme was geckos. It was on the logo and in the challenges and around the tribal council.
And now it's the bats.
Yeah, and this season it's bat themed. And I just wish they committed a little bit further into the bit. I wish as a part of the immunity necklace that they had like a little like Batman face mask that they could have the players wear as well.
That seems pretty copyrighty, but I like it. I'll say this. I hear you. I would modify that dishonorable mention to say shame on these half-themed seasons. China, fantastic themed season. Bats that sometimes show up. The geckos, at least they had that giant gecko in the one challenge. I did like that. But if you're going to commit, really commit and don't do this sort of wishy-washy thing.
I'm okay as long as they just put bats in the logo for the season, like the actual word, like Survivor 47, bats. And that'd be enough for me. But I feel like they want to put a lot of like bat references without fully committing to the bit.
Yeah, that's true. They're like, we can't change the naming convention now. We confuse people. My honorable mention is the 1914 Christmas Day armistice in World War I. So Gabe made this reference vaguely, and I wanted to just look it up because I'd heard the same story he relates, which is that on Christmas Day during World War I, soldiers from both sides of the conflict ventured into the no man's land between the trenches, exchanged gifts, sang songs, had a day of peace in their fighting. So I looked it up because I'd heard this same story, and it's this kind of message, right, of look how great humans can be and compassionate and kind. What I didn't know, right, is the Christmas Day armistices were informal. They happened all over the battlefields of the war, but not everywhere, just in many places, in 1914. In 1915, a couple happened. And in 1916, none happened because the war had gotten so violent and the leadership had gotten so strict, right? And encouraged people to not see your neighbors, but to see mortal enemies, right? And don't say, oh, why are we fighting this war over political stuff? Say, this is a guy who killed a bunch of my friends, right? Absolute, senseless thing. And so the really delightful human moment of 1914 is lost within 2 years because of the tolls of war and hatred, which is a great shame. And I think especially given the amount of vitriol and hatred in the world right now, it's good to remember that we're all human and not to be 1916, but to try to be 1914.
So what does this mean for Gabe's analogy and the rest of the season then? Does this mean we're going to hit like episode 10 and they're all going to hate each other?
Yes. Yeah. Well, in Gabe's analogy, right, the auction was 1914, and I think next week will be in 1916 at this rate. It's escalating quickly. So, be kind to one another, and that's my honorable mention.
Wow. Well, thank you for that heartfelt message at the end of the pod, Jack. Thanks for listening this week. Next week, we'll be back covering episode 9 of Survivor 47 with every perspective you can think of, but especially
the pro-Andy perspective.
Every Andy angle we will discuss. Maybe some of the other contestants too.
This is like Red Zone, but not for multiple games of Survivor, just for different angles of Andy. Every possible Andy consideration. Welcome back to Survivor Andylytics. There's the episode title.
There we go. Oh, right at the end, right at the buzzer. Okay, we'll see you then.